Being an effective leader means that I know where I'm going and I know where I'm taking our people. And my direction is determined by Christ when he said to go and make disciples. Putting that in modern terms, I see that as meaning that we are a church that is deep and wide. We are wide in that we attract the unchurched, we're going, but we're also deep in that as we win people to Christ, we take them into a deeper relationship with him, and they just don't have a shallow surface relationship. And so that is what I determine effectiveness by. Are we being deep and wide, not just having nice services? My main priorities are to lead, feed, and intercede. In leading the church, that involves leading them in being deep and wide. It involves casting vision, raising up leaders, developing teams, and establishing effective strategies and structures that help us fulfill the mission. The feeding means that I am preparing solid biblical messages that can feed both the unchurched to bring them to Christ and our established saints to help them go deeper in their relationship with the Lord. And then intercede means that I am praying for our people, my staff, our leaders, and the ministries, services, outreaches, that I'm lifting our church up in prayer because prayer is the engine that drives the church. I started in ministry as an associate pastor for 4 years in Salt Lake City, Utah, youth ministry and church administration where my portfolio is there. I then went to Sioux City, Iowa at Central Assembly for 14 years, and now I've been here at Casper Faith for about 4.5 years here in Casper, Wyoming. During those times, I have been a sectional men's representative for 3 years, vice president of the Ministerial Association in Sioux City for 2 years, president there for 1 year, and then I've been a sectional presbyter for about 5 years in Iowa and 2 years in Wyoming. Being a presbyter helped me rub shoulders with some really great leaders, and I could pick their brains and also see how they handled some difficult situations. I was also put into positions where I would have to deal with troubled churches. So those experiences really helped me with that. Aaron, let's reshoot this point, okay? Number 4. Being a presbyter has given me the opportunity let's do it again, Aaron. Being a presbyter has given me the opportunity to rub shoulders with some really great leaders, and I could see how they handled difficult situations. It also put me in situations where I had to go into a troubled church and to deal with situations there. So that was a great experience in preparing me for where I'm at now. When I was a youth pastor in Salt Lake City, I thought I was only a youth pastor, but really I was hired to do a lot of church administration, and I did not like that because I felt I was going to be a youth pastor for life, and I chafed under that. But when God called me to be a lead pastor 4 years later, I realized, at really probably a few years into that all the things that I had done as an associate outside of my youth portfolio, God was using that to prepare me to be a lead pastor. And then at Central, hang on, Aaron. You can edit this. I'll start the Central part over. At Central, I was a rookie pastor, and so I was green, and I made a lot of mistakes. But I learned a lot of things, and I found some things that really worked well. And the same strategies that I used to develop a missions-minded church, the strategies to equip lay people and raise them up into leadership and be effective, strategies for teaching stewardship, plus many other things, I carried those with me here to Casper. And also some of the negative things that I learned, some of the mistakes I made. When I went to Central, I did not realize that there were some subtle control groups that really hindered the progress of taking the church forward. And so when I came here to Casper, I realized that I needed to be more aware of that and not let the control groups control and stymie the progress for God's vision for our church. Challenge for leadership. The toughest challenge of leadership, there's probably been two of them. First of all, it's keeping my priorities of leading, feeding, and interceding. It's so easy to get off track and to get consumed with other things or try to get into people's expectations and please them. The other one is loving people who may be apathetic or uncommitted or do have their own agendas. And sometimes when you encounter difficult people, it can really wear on you, and you really have to keep a heart of love. The toughest challenge that I have had in leadership, I'm going to redo this. Toughest lesson, okay. Probably the toughest lesson I've learned is that leadership is never easy, and your joy has to come from contentment with Christ and not from your accomplishments in ministry. Because those accomplishments are short-lived, and you think, if I just get to this certain place, have so many people, or we have this kind of a building, or we have these kinds of ministries, or this many staff, that's when we'll be happy. But it's never enough. And so I need to find my contentment, my joy in my relationship with Jesus, and that, no matter where you get to in ministry, no matter the successes you've had, there's always new challenges, and it's always difficult because we're dealing with people, and people have sinful natures. They're not perfect, so it's going to be a struggle as we wage warfare against the enemy. Steps to deal with that. To keep my priorities, I try to make a list of the goals and projects that line up with leading, feeding, and interceding, and I determine how much time that's going to take, and then I'll sit down with my calendar and block off those required amounts of time on my calendar, and I make appointments with myself to fulfill those three priorities. For loving people, probably the biggest thing is to be praying for people. Jesus said in Matthew 5:44 to bless those who curse you, love your enemies, do good to them. And that's really a key in keeping a soft heart, a tender heart towards people. For the challenge, let's see. And for the toughest lesson, it's really cultivating my intimacy with Christ and making sure that I have a vibrant relationship with Him, and reminding myself that accomplishments and worldly success, they are not the things that make you happy, but the presence of the Lord in my life makes me happy. For making hard decisions, I always start with prayer. That is key. Next, I will search the Word about situations, and I really listen to the Holy Spirit to see what He is speaking to me. I've found that if I ignore the Spirit and I just go with what I think is right, or maybe even what others have told me, it usually comes back and bites me every time. And so really letting the Holy Spirit speak to me and giving me peace about the direction I need to take and handling the situation is key. I will talk to staff, key leaders, some mentors, some colleagues, other pastors, friends that I have that are friends of mine, superintendents, and get their input. But ultimately it comes down to praying and, letting the peace of the Holy Spirit guide me in those situations. When I enter the conflict situation, I make sure that I'm prayed up, and that I am not defensive when people, if they react or attack me. I try to ask them a lot of questions to gain an understanding, and I go into the meeting trying to believe the best in people, not assuming the worst. And then as we're talking, if they do say something that, might inflame me or make me upset, I just take a breath and I speak slowly, kind of following the pattern in James where he talks about be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. And I just try to have a calm attitude, because when my emotions escalate, it does not help resolving anything. For handling conflict. For handling conflict, I follow Matthew 18, where I go to the person one-on-one, and if I sense that the issue is not resolved, then I'll take 2 or 3 people with me. Something that I've recently been doing in ministry is that if it's a ministry area, not a personal issue, is that I will take maybe a staff member or a board member with me to confront an issue, realizing that Jesus, when he sent people into ministry, he sent them by twos. And I think sometimes having another person there with me is good, because that way the party that I am confronting, they can't say something that I never said. They can't accuse me of something. I have a witness there. And so I have found that has been helpful. But I have a tendency to gunny sack, where I want to hold things. It might be a little thing, and so I just hold it thinking it's not that big. And so it's like stuffing a rock in a gunny sack. And the more you do that, you get sick and tired of carrying it around, and so you just unload it on a person. So I found trying to keep my sack empty is really a key in handling conflict, because otherwise I'm dropping a sack of rocks on them, and it's hard to deal with all of those issues at once. To push myself to be a better leader, I read books, and books that really focus on areas of ministry, church growth, my own personal spiritual development and formation. I've also found that it's important to attend conferences. There was a time when I didn't go to a conference for about 4 years, and when I finally went to one, it was like, wow, I really realized that I had missed out and had been shortchanging myself. And, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, a conference is kind of like 1,000 books, because you experience it, and there's something you can pick up by experiencing something instead of just reading it in a book. I also have an armor bearer, someone that I meet with regularly, and we keep each other accountable. That has to be a part of my growth, where someone's saying, hey, are you being, full of integrity and handling finances, both personally and in the church? How's your marriage? How's your relationship with God? Your relationship with kids? And so my armor bearer is a very important part in my personal growth with God. Creating vision. People, okay, I'm going to do this over, Aaron. In creating vision and casting it start over. The first thing to realize about vision is that people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. And so people need to trust me. They need to feel that I have their best interests at heart, that I'm credible, that I'm faithful and dependable. And if I'm going to cast a big vision, then they really have to buy into me. If it's a small scale vision, then it doesn't take as much trust that I've built with them. In seeking vision, I pray to the Lord. I want to have His mindset, His direction, what He wants me to do. And I have to take people through process, because many times, as I've been thinking about something, I've been talking with leaders, I've been developing a strategy where we're going to go. And, I have maybe thought about it for several weeks or several months. And so when I present it to people, I think naturally they're just going to hop on board. But that's not the case. I have to walk people through some of the same process, some of the same journey that I have been on. Aaron, if you could add this to it also. Once I have establish the vision and I know where we're going, I have personal conversations with different people, with key leaders, and I just share, hey, this is what we're thinking, this is where we're going, what do you think about it? Many times it's these personal meetings before a big meeting where we're presenting vision and casting it that really make the difference. I also have to remind people of past victories because people forget and we're scared of change. You know, Moses had to remind the children of Israel about the plagues and the Red Sea, and they still didn't want to go into the Promised Land. And so people need to be reminded of what God has done for us and the vision that He's already accomplished. Okay, let's do this. Gather and develop. When gathering and developing people, I look for people who are faithful in little things, people that are loyal, people who are submissive, people that have a passion for an area and the ability to carry it out. And those are the key things I look for in gathering a team. With them, I meet with them personally. I pour into them. We develop ministry strategies and goals. I will create ministry descriptions so they know what's expected of them. And I write those out, and they have them in their possession. And those are some key things in gathering a team and developing them. Okay. Those meetings with people are part of the process of discipling them. I will also give them books, CDs, webinars that will help them in their area of ministry, take them to conferences, just pouring into them. A lot of discipleship is how much does the person themselves want to grow, but then I also share with them practical things in my life, things about my philosophy of ministry, things that I found that have helped me to grow, and just sharing my life with them. That's really how I go about discipling them. Okay, success. Success is different for everyone. I think a lot of times we measure success by the ABCs. A is attendance, B is buildings, C is cash. If we have a lot of money, a lot of people, and a nice facility, then we feel we're a success. But for me, I look at success is... Start over. I think success can be a lot of things. It's different things to different people. One of them... Okay. I'm going to start over, Aaron. Success is a lot of things. Probably the biggest criteria of success for me is I know that someday I'm going to stand before God and I'll have to answer to Him for how I led the church that He gave me. And every decision, the vision, handling conflict, implementing change, all of those different aspects of leadership, I know I'm going to give an account for my decisions I've made, and so I'm going to start over and try to make this concise, Aaron. Success to me is many things. The first thing is someday I'm going to stand before God, and I need a clear conscience when He asks me, what did you do with the church that I gave you? And I want to be able to say, Lord, I obeyed you, I was faithful, and I didn't back down or shirk my responsibility. And so I try to evaluate all my decisions by saying, you know, when I stand before God, am I going to feel good about this? Can I say, Lord, I honestly and with all my heart thought I was doing the right thing? That's one of the first measures of success, knowing that I've got a good conscience with God. Secondly, it's knowing that the people closest to me love and respect me the most. If my wife and my kids don't respect me, if they're not with me on the journey, then no matter what I accomplish temporally in ministry, it doesn't really matter. Also, I want my leaders and my staff to respect me and think highly of me and love me and want to be around me. The last aspect of success is changed lives. I want to know that people are better now than they were 2 years ago, that they're a better father, a better wife, a better husband, that they are growing in their call with God, that they're further along now than before I ministered to them. What have I discovered? The greatest reward, okay? I would say seeing growth in people. When you're at a place for 5, 10, 15 years, and you can look back and see where a person was and where they are now, that's what gives me the greatest joy. When we left our church in Sioux City after 14 years, someone came up to me and said, I would not be where I'm at now if it wasn't for all the time and energy you poured into me. That was really satisfying and fulfilling. Okay, Aaron, that's it.